I saw on Twitter that the Economist had an article that they said something like 400 to 750,000 Russians have died in this war. You
Right.
know, and I didn't actually read the Economist article
Yeah.
itself, but I saw a lot of people on Twitter reposting it and saying this.
Right.
And then, for the longest time, we've had the report that the number of Gazans that died was around 37,000, and was just kind of stuck there for a long time. And then
Yeah.
just today or yesterday, the Lancet Medical Journal has said that they think that the number is now 186,000, which
Okay.
is to me more believable.
Right.
But these numbers are so important in controlling the narratives of
Right.
these wars now, and people
Yeah.
will latch onto a number or an article
Right.
and just state it over and over again, and it's like, how do you know it's true? And then it just got me thinking, like, whenever I look at the history books, I was really into World War II, World War One as a kid, Civil War, and you can always see, like, these are the belligerents, and these are, and you can see the losses on each side, how many killed and wounded. And I'm like, if we can get those numbers back in 1863, and I thought that they were accurate, like, how come we can't get these numbers now? Are we just in the fog of war, so both sides are just going to be producing this, and we
Right.
will get the true casualty numbers when it's all over? Or
Yeah.
what do you make of
Right.
all this stuff coming out?
Okay. Well, first on Ukraine. Yeah. No, I've seen there's a lot of claims of very high Russian casualty and killed in action. Yeah. Again and again, I'm seeing like they're losing 1,000 or 1,500 a day, and what I clearly this is simply it's not based on anything as far as I can tell. Other than Ukraine propaganda. Again, we've talked about this earlier. There is one project that does try to keep very close tabs on how many Russians have been killed in action over the course of this
Media
conflict.
Zona, right?
Media Zona, BBC. Okay, right. BBC, no friend of the Russian government. The same with Media Zona. Media Zona is a Russian NGO, but it is anti-Putin. But they, again, we talked about this. They scour the records, the obituaries, the news stories. They go to cemeteries, and they. I just checked on it just a few days ago. Went to their website, and they had a total of 58,000 confirmed deaths. And then, maybe even more importantly, in contradiction to what these recent claims are, that Russians are now losing something like 1,000 a day. It looks like Russian losses are about as low as they have been throughout the conflict. There have been times, for example, during the Bakhmut battle, when Russian casualties spiked, when the Wagner organization was, using tactics that were perhaps a little bit more reckless than what the Russian standard military uses. But that was one spike. There was a spike at the beginning, like in February, March in 2022. But over the last several months, it's actually been about as low as they've been throughout the conflict. Much below 1,000 a month, and. So that's that. I think that's really the only thing that we can go to if we're going to, if you're going to talk about reality. Okay, this is reality. This is what they've been able to find, and there's no evidence that there has been some sort of surge in Russian casualties. And then I think the second thing to do is just to think about, what's happening here. What advantages the Russians have over the Ukrainians. They have total air dominance. They have a huge advantage in artillery. And historically, like most casualties actually are caused by artillery. Something like 80%, are actually caused by artillery or bombs, rather than bullets. Now, with this huge advantage, and everybody admits that this advantage exists, I think even if the Russians are attacking, but they're not attacking rapidly. It's clear they're not being reckless. They're moving incrementally. you would expect casualties to be much higher on the Ukrainian side. And, the Ukrainians just don't have the firepower to inflict the same kind of casualties on the Russians. And if the Russians are careful,
Right.
they don't use human wave tactics. They've been accused of doing that, but nobody's provided any kind of video evidence of it. And I think that's just completely a fabrication. It's total fiction. From what we know, what everybody even admits on both sides, you would expect casualties to be much higher on the Ukrainian side. Now, we can go over to Gaza unless you want to ask something more about that.
Well, I was just going to say, why would the Economist write an article like this if it, what's their incentive? Are they being paid by the government? Is there a certain amount of funds to produce this type of data to keep the Ukrainian war narrative going, to keep funding going for narrative? Like, it's supposed to be The Economist was something that, I studied economics in college. I always looked up to that magazine.
Right,
Right, that's always what I thought. It's a serious
Right.
journal. It's like, I didn't think that it would, why would it just fabricate things? And actually, one of the sources in there they have is Mediazona as well, but along with other things. So maybe they just added up all the numbers and got the highest number they could come up with.
Right.
But, why?
It's been a neoconservative magazine. It's long been very Russophobic, so it's very closely aligned, with the globalists and the Russia haters. So there's just kind of a predisposition to, to see bad things about Russia. This is something that I think we find in The Economist going way back. You would think that, again, a serious journal would do serious journalism, but that's just not true. I mean, a lot of these institutions have been corrupted in the West now, and I'm sure they're relying on sources which seem authoritative, like MI6 and the CIA and whatever. But these organizations, these intelligence agencies, are purveyors of falsehoods, and I think the Economist is only happy to go along. Maybe they half believe it because they want to believe it. And then they may think that this is an exaggeration, maybe in their more honest moments, but they want to stick it to the Russians. So they're going to play along with it.